Welcome to Helping Organisations Thrive. Today I have Paula James. Good afternoon, Paula.
Afternoon, Julian.
Good to see you. You're not too far from me. You're in the sort of locality, but we're still doing this online. I was going to tell the audience a little bit about you. You are the Regional Managing Partner in Chichester for Irwin Mitchell Solicitors, which is a UK-wide firm of solicitors. And you sort of work particularly with clients to resolve disputes about wills, estates, or trusts. And today we're going to be looking at exploring really how you lead and how you develop happy and expert teams, which is obviously part of what you do. You have a lot of expert teams, but how do you develop them? How do you make them happy? And sort of with that comes sort of well-being, career development, and obviously flexible working as well. But before we go into that, I want us to ask a little bit more about you as what you love about what you do, Paula.
Well, I really do love my job at Irwin Mitchell in Chichester, and on reflection on that, one of the key reasons I love it is because of the colleagues that I work with, and their support for me, and equally I hope my support for them. But my role is really twofold. In my job as a dispute resolution lawyer, one of the things that excites me about my role is finding solutions to some very difficult challenges, usually in quite sad family situations, and working with the family to use my expert knowledge of the law and tax in some cases to find a solution to whatever the problem is for the whole family. And the other part, and it also involves solving problems and challenging myself, is to make sure that the team that I work with has defined objectives and really enjoy their jobs too, because after all, we all work to live, not the other way around. We don't live to work.
I like that. Yes, we work to live, not to live to work. And it's interesting. You like problem solving, which is obviously you're dealing with some a lot of personal matters, but also some very tricky things. I'm just curious to understand what got you into that. Have you always been quite interested in solving problems and getting into nitty-gritty of things?
That's a really interesting question, because at the start of my career, I don't think I really knew what I wanted to do. Indeed, as an A-level student and even a law student, I don't think that I was convinced that I wanted to be a solicitor. And if I'm honest about it, I think I probably fell into the profession because I did a law degree and it was the next step after that. When you become a solicitor, you have to do 2 years of a training contract in the office before you qualify as a solicitor. And I sat in all seats of the predecessor to Irwin Mitchell. I've never worked anywhere else professionally. And I decided that litigation was my thing. And I think that very early in a solicitor's career, you know whether you are a contentious lawyer or a non-contentious lawyer. And all lawyers are problem solvers, actually. We're all there to resolve an issue that clients have. But with litigation, the problems that I was being asked to solve were so diverse and so interesting that there was never no day was ever the same. And in fact, 2 of my first cases that I ran on my own with the supervision of my partners was a case that involved a lorry which had broken down in the Fleet A M3 services, and it was full of seafood, and in particular frozen smoked salmon. And in order to progress this claim, I had to learn all about the process by which salmon was blast frozen before it was transported anywhere. And the second case that I dealt with was about condoms and about the flavouring of condoms. So I had to learn all about the process in which condoms were flavoured. So as a 26-year-old junior solicitor, that was the kind of the diversity of case that I got involved with. And then with private client litigation, Irwin Mitchell is a private client specialist. And so we have lots of teams who deal with helping people plan for their life journey, from starting out in business through to maybe helping kids buy properties, to maybe putting grandkids through private schools, to ending their business. How do they sell their business? What's the succession of their business? And making sure that as much as possible of the family wealth is preserved for the family, rather than being paid unnecessarily in tax in some cases. And out of those came the need to deal with disputes within families. So sometimes a will is not as expected. So you're expecting to inherit a share of a relative's estate, and that share is not forthcoming. And one wonders whether that is deliberate or whether there has been some sort of underhand behaviour in the family. Somebody has persuaded the relative not to leave you what you were expecting, or whether there's been a mistake in the will. So, simple mistakes like saying, I leave all my money to my children, and accidentally excluding stepchildren who you might have brought up from a very early age. And so those are the kind of disputes, along with complex trust disputes, that I deal with on a day-to-day basis. And again, it's the challenge of understanding what the intention was at the very beginning and trying to help a family. There's only one pot after all, and trying to ensure that that's divided up in a fair way.
Well, there's a lot of variety, obviously, in your role, and it sounds quite complex as well. And obviously, there's that personal matter as well, which must be quite emotive as well, which is quite tricky. You also manage people, which are equally, emotive, complex, and can be problems as well. And you said to me you want to develop people and sort of develop happy and expert teams. I'd like you to just talk a bit more about how you going about developing your people who work with you.
Yes, I mean, you're quite right. I'm very lucky to work with a fantastic bunch of people, actually, and there aren't too many problems, for which I'm thankful. But there are, from time to time, issues that have to be dealt with. And your question stems from, or the happy and expert team issue stems from recently interviewing for some solicitors to join the team. And I was speaking to a colleague about it, and I pinched it straight from the colleague because I thought it was so brilliant. It was that what we want is to build happy and expert teams. They have to be experts because we are a large law firm with very niche specialities. And so the people that we have in our team have to know exactly what they're doing, because that's what they're being paid to do. But we also want them to be happy. If they're happy, they will stay with us. They will be good team players, and they will be productive. And at the end of the day, the firm will make the profit it needs in order to continue to grow and develop as a firm. And so that's where that came from, and it's become my mantra, really. And it is so important, and they are so interlinked, both the happy and the expert members of the teams, because most people joining the team will want to develop their expertise, as well in order to develop their careers. So training is really important, and it's not just the professional members of the team that I'm referring to. It's every single member of the team will have some aspirations to develop their role within the team that they operate in, and it's understanding what their aspirations are and making sure that you've got a good match between their aspirations and your ideas for how the whole team is going to develop. And if you do have a mismatch, then there's an element of we've got to do some modifications here, because either what you want won't happen, or if you carry on that trajectory, what I was thinking about isn't going to happen. And that might be a good thing. You have to stop and really think about it. So making sure that everybody talks to me or to their team leader about what their own ideas are for their own talent management and progression within the firm. And it's really important that that's a listening exercise, because sometimes the idea is not completely at item. So you might get a complete surprise by, if in my example, I might have a paralegal who tells me that in 2 years' time they'd like to be a solicitor, and in fact there is a route that they could follow if supported that would take them through to qualification as a solicitor. I might not have a role for a solicitor in 2 years' time in that particular team or area. So we have to discuss it and think, well, could I expand that team so that I could accommodate another qualified member of the team? So it's that real listening exercise and not being fixed in your views for growth. And making sure.
So just to interrupt there, how do you facilitate that? I mean, you probably have a yearly appraisal, but how is it an ongoing facilitation of that listening, which I think is really valuable, actually?
Well, I do speak to all my direct team members specifically on a monthly basis about where they are. I think everybody should have a defined plan. In my firm, we call it a personal development plan, but in other businesses it has different names. But it doesn't have to be written down, but it does have to be understood, and it does have to be agreed upon. And so it's just that constant maintaining of that conversation. And I recently took over a team from a colleague who just moved to a different role, and it dawned on me only a few months ago that maybe those conversations hadn't been happening as regularly as they should have been. And I started talking to people who weren't my direct reports about what their plans were. And the response was amazing. They were so grateful that people were talking to them about their own paths. It appeared that there was almost a taboo about talking about promotion. People were waiting for a tap on a shoulder. That shouldn't be the case. I should be hearing from people, it is my goal to be promoted. My timescale is this. Is this a possibility? Does this accord with what your ideas are for me? And those conversations are very happy conversations. People are pleased to talk to you about them. They're talking about themselves, so they're
and they're talking
confident about that.
The future as well, and that it's quite inspirational. When you have those conversations, when you have ones where there's a real misalignment of expectations, either they think they should be this in this period of time and you think they shouldn't be, or I want to go this path and you think I'm not entirely sure. How do you handle those differences? Because they're bound to happen.
Yes, of course they happen. And sometimes it's a time scale thing. So sometimes people are just not where they are, not as far forward on the path that they think they are. And honesty and a clear plan to get people where they want to be is the answer, but honesty really is the best policy, and a constant dialogue about how things are doing. Feedback also, so if you can give specific examples of why people aren't where they are, or when they are, this piece of work was exceptional, but it is not the norm yet, and we'd like it to become the norm. So I think feedback is really important when people are developing career paths.
And we talk about happy team and sort of happy and expert teams, and I really like that expression because it emphasizes obviously the technical aspect, and then there's happy. The question I would ask, how do you measure happiness, and how do you know they're happy? Because we can measure probably the technical piece and the expert bit, but and it's it'd be interesting to how you get to that point where we go, we've got a happy team here. How do you know when you get there?
Well, part of it is obviously just a feeling, isn't it? Sometimes you will know that you've got a team member who's very, very unhappy for whatever reason, and sometimes the reasons for their unhappiness can create a negative impact on the rest of the team. But the converse obviously is much better. So if you have somebody with a very positive attitude, they can bring the whole team with them and infect people with their positive energy. So I'm hoping that any problems are soluble so that people who are unhappy, which of course is going to happen from time to time, don't bring everybody else down, and that the positive people can help them get back where they want to be. But your question was, how do you tell if people are happy? So yes, of course, part of it is a feeling. Part of it is whether they tell us they're happy. So we regularly survey our colleagues and ourselves, and we take part in a Great Place to Work survey. And I'm proud to say we're very successful at that. We are a great place to work, and what's more, the Chichester team are a really great place to work. But it's really interesting, because where you have sectors where you're not doing so well, for example, recently we were not doing so well on the reward and recognition side of running a business. We had a full market evaluation and were able to do something about that quite quickly, to make sure that we weren't falling down on those scores. We do really well on communication scores and making sure everybody knows what's going on in the business as a whole. And the other way I think that we know whether or not people are happy is if you can retain your teams, if you have low attrition rates. And part of that is, as I said before, is talking to people regularly and making sure that they know what they have to do. They have clear objectives. They have a clear plan about what at least the year ahead of them looks like. And every so often you stop, check. Am I there yet? Am I on the right path? What have I got to focus on to get to where I want to be? Do I need to change my role?
Yeah, some good ways there. That mean the employee surveys are really helpful. They're insightful. It's good to hear that you're not only listening, but you're also acting upon it, because often surveys can be a little bit of, oh, we're doing something, but actually we're not going to act upon those things. You just sit on the rewards and recognition, which is important. I think the asking people, getting close to people, as you say, and just sort of getting that sort of feedback of what's going on. So when you identify perhaps somebody's unhappy, and that could be a gut feeling, or you observe something, because obviously that's quite important as well, to observe how people are acting. How do you sort of go about that as an intervention in terms of talking to them? But also, I'm just thinking in the last 18 months, it's probably been a bit more difficult to observe people because of nature of people working more from home and everything else. So there's two questions there. I was just wondering how that's been, identifying where people have been at in a in person and also in a remote sense.
Yes, and of course, individual, team, and then firm well-being has been pulled into sharp focus by the fact
Mm.
that most people have been working from home during this period, and indeed my firm has almost entirely been working from home, apart from people like the reception staff who just couldn't. And it would have been easy to have lost that sense of collaboration and that sense of team, but it didn't happen. In fact, I was amazed at how we were able to shift from completely office-based working to remote working and still maintain that sense of collaboration.
Mm.
And we had to change a lot of systems, within a very short period of time. So we moved to using Microsoft Teams, which gave us the ability to call people in. And I think it had most impact on people who were in training roles or early on in their career. And it meant that colleagues had to make a conscious effort to ensure that maybe more junior colleagues were involved in calls with opponents, calls with clients, so that they could learn from that. It's much easier when you're in an open plan office and you've got a whole view of what's happening. From a supervision point of view, of course, it's easier as well, because you can hear and see what's going on. Yes, remotely it has been very difficult, and well-being has been the forefront of everything we've been doing, really, to keep colleagues safe and to keep them happy. And we've done some amazing things. We've put in mental health advocates for all teams, so that if you are having a hard time, or you just want a chat, or you're very frustrated, which I think everybody has been, there are people that you can just talk to. We, for instance, this autumn offered everybody a wellbeing day, just one day that they didn't have to come to work, that they just took for themselves, and we invited people to share what they'd done, and that was amazing. We had some beautiful pictures of people on long walks in the countryside. We had people having exciting things like spa days. We had people who just said, I'm going to have a lie-in because I never get one.
That's brilliant.
And so just constantly, the thing that has really happened by remote working is that it's really hard to shut off. So when you work 9 to 5 and you have to leave because you have to pick your children up from nursery, or you have to get home to prepare a meal for the family, you leave the office at more or less a defined time, whereas when the laptop is just there on your dining table, it is much harder to shut away from. So this wellbeing day was to try and reconnect people with their life outside of work, and it was a very successful thing, and lovely that people were prepared to share what they had chosen to do on their day off. Lots of people connecting with friends that they hadn't been in contact with before, and things like that. When things do start to go wrong, again, it's really about talking to people, finding sometimes the things that are going wrong are not within a firm's control. They're things that are outside of the workplace. We can offer people much more flexible terms of working now because we are also remote. So if there's stresses about,
Have you gone to more of a hybrid working then? Is that how it's working now?
we've gone, we call our policy flexible by choice, and it's
Okay.
entirely that. So people, as long as people work the required hours per week, it's up to them when they do that, unless there's a business need. So for instance, if I've got a court appointment, I could hardly say to Irwin Mitchell, I'm staying in bed on Monday morning so someone else can do my court appointment. So if there's a business need, if we need to come in for a client meeting, the offices are open for those kind of things. Team meetings, I think there is a place for those to happen face to face, given the current restrictions. At the time we're broadcasting this, Julian, we're in work from home if you can. So we're trying not to go into the office unless it's completely necessary. So, but I do think there is a place for meeting face to face, particularly teams who are collaborating on working for the same client or the same business.
And how are you managing that? Because obviously flexible working is great, and it's been coming for many years, and now it's been forced through COVID, and it's worked, and people have been really helpful. But how are you managing a team? Because obviously you could be in the office, tomorrow, but the rest of the team won't be there. And I appreciate the team meetings and certain touch points you together. How do you keep that? You know what's going on with your team in terms of their well-being, and making sure that they're doing the work they should be doing, the support they need, and the guidance they need. How's that been facilitated? How are you going about that sort of practically for you?
So it does depend a bit on the group of people and what their particular role or even their particular needs are. Some of the teams that I manage catch up every morning at, say, 9:15 for 5 minutes. We've got this and this to do today. If you do that bit, I'll do this bit. We have weekly team meetings in most teams where the whole team is expected to be online. And again, we're discussing workloads, we're discussing what we've got coming up. We will discuss any particular knotty client problems where maybe more heads are better than one. And I think that's the way many businesses have had to do things online, is to probably have more meetings than we ever did before, because we don't have the desk to desk chats, banter. Oh, could you just do this for me? Those kind of conversations don't happen. Things are much more structured.
Right. Okay.
So there's likely to be an introduction to helping out on a case, a passing over of a job on a case, and then constant communication and feedback between the supervisor and the person who's been delegated to. But from a well-being point of view, really, it's those team meetings and the regular interaction between the manager and the colleague, to really make sure that everything is all right. And sometimes it really isn't. And that is really a challenge when things are not okay and it's outside your control. And what can you do as a leader in the business to maintain the business need and an excellent service to our clients, but support that person through what will inevitably be a very difficult time for them, so that when they're restored to health, or when the problem is solved and they can come back and they're really feel that they've been part of a team who's rallied round with them at a difficult time.
Yeah, it sounds like you put sort of well-being and people at the centre of your business, and it's great to hear of what you're doing as a business and how you're going about it. I'm not just talking, the well-being days are great, but it seems to be the core of you, what you spoke about on this last half an hour or so. That's what really matters, and you've certainly brought to life the developing happy and expert teams, and it's not a bad outcome or an objective, even though it can be a little bit tricky to measure, have happy teams, because I think there's something really in that, and that's really important. I really thank you for you sharing today and your insights, and I'm sure there's lots in there that other people can take some learnings from it. If people want to get in touch with you, how can they connect with you?
Oh, they can connect with me on LinkedIn or by email. I'm paula.james@irwinmitchell.com. I'd be very pleased to hear from anyone.
Brilliant. Well, really, thank you for your time today, Paula. I've really appreciated it. Really enjoyed talking to you.
And you. Thank you very much, Julian.